Hello, everybody. Hello, hello. This is Matt Hunsucker with iOS List. I'm here with Jay Guso, co-founder of Rig Hunt.
Good to
Long
see you again,
time.
Matt.
How's it going? Good to see you again.
All good, my friend. How you doing?
I'm doing well, staying busy like you are, I'm sure. For the listeners, it's been a while since we got together. Do you want to give them a quick rundown of who Rig Hut is and how you got into the business, just in case they haven't been following along with our previous chats?
Yeah. So quick synopsis. Rig Hut is a purpose-built piece of parking management software, right? So the tools that we build are all purpose-built for semi-truck parking applications. So our kind of root functionality is everything, including your inventory, payments, and access control. And then there's some other modular components that we can add on top of the core functionality of the software to make the lives of parking operators easier. We started this business. I feel like I've said this story to you, Matt, so many times. We started this business because we used to be the operator, right? So we were boots on the ground managing a portfolio of 5 facilities down here in South Florida. We ran that business originally on a combination of Google Sheets, Excel, and Venmo. Basically, we tried a couple of different tools in terms of property management software that were, kind of they weren't direct fits for our use case, right? So we used things like self storage software. We tried to use apartment management software, but it simply didn't, it didn't work. So we had the bright idea at the time of saying let's try to build our own solution, which we did. That was the first version of the application, and then we commercialized it and started selling it out into the market.
What did that first version look like? I assume you had one killer pain point that made you say, "All right, enough of
Yeah.
this. We've got to do something. We've got to roll our own." Like, what was the very first feature you wanted to build, and then how was it
Well,
evolved?
the first version of the application, if I actually showed it to you, Matt, would be kind of embarrassing. It was a no code solution that we basically bought off the shelf and tried to make our own, but it facilitated what we wanted originally, which was being able to take payments online and track our inventory in digital fashion as opposed to having to manually make these updates. And that was a no code solution that lasted us maybe like 3 months, and then we started building our true, custom built version in the beginning of 2023 was when we January 2023 was when we started truly building, our own custom solution. And the first thing we built, again, focusing on inventory and payments was just that. So we wanted a system that was automatically going to update our availability pool based on new reservations coming in and cancellations or move outs that were going out. And we wanted drivers to have the ability to easily find, book, and pay for their parking space online, as opposed to having to call and us, give a Venmo address or a Zelle address or create a QuickBooks invoice and send it to them and then give them the gate code later. So those were the first two things, inventory and payments. And then we layered in access control, which was the next most important feature. So we took that inventory system that's all accurate and reconciled in real time. We tied it into the booking engine and the payment suite. And then we added access control on top of that so that a driver, once he found where he wanted to park, he could get into the yard without really having to interact with a person.
That's great. So removing friction every step of the way for both the operator and the driver, just to
Yes, sir.
get the two parties together.
Yep.
Well, it's been a while since we caught up. I think since our last, state of the truck parking market episode, we've had
Yeah.
tariffs on, tariffs off,
Yep.
tariffs up, tariffs down, tariffs, scratched by the Supreme Court, then blanket tariffs applied back on. What has that roller coaster ride meant for your customers, the truck parking owner, the truck drivers, the logistics companies? How have they responded to all that volatility in the past year?
I think it's a very local question. In some markets, they probably don't feel much, right? Like we always use South Florida as an example because it's our backyard, but there are several markets that are very similar in the sense that the supply demand curve is so out of whack, meaning the supply has so much control that it almost doesn't matter from a managed parking perspective. I'm
Mhm.
sure in depots and port related operations, it has affected it, but we don't really play in that space yet. I think we've seen a lot more activity in like those cross border markets, your Laredos, right? And but so again, just to wrap it, I think it's a very localized question. And if you look across our map, across the entire country, if you surveyed, like if you just divvy the country up into 3 or 4 sections, you'd get like wildly varying responses depending on who you ask. I'd say the primary markets have been extremely resilient. right, to rates, and they really haven't seen a significant decrease in occupancy. Some of your secondaries or tertiaries, guys that are more off the beaten path, they are they're feeling a little bit of a dip. I'm not sure that it's directly correlated with tariffs, but that's kind of our perspective on state of the market.
Interesting. Interesting. As you think about different markets and supply demand in each, it sounds like there's very limited demand, supply is pretty constant. So there's a mismatch already. Is it a real estate issue? Is it an operations issue because owners can't get visibility to their yards? Is it a visibility thing? Is it a technology thing? Are there parking spaces that are in market, but drivers are unaware or the friction is too high for them to actually access that supply?
The latter is certainly the case in some markets, right? Like go back to Miami. There's a ton of yards here that have, I mean, they don't even have a sign out on the front of on the road in front of the yard, right?
Yeah.
It's all just word of mouth. But I think that's more and more becoming less of the case. And I wouldn't say that demand is soft. Just to clarify what you're asking me, you're saying why are there some yards that are having trouble driving occupancy?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So market specific and rate specific. Everything is a function of price, right? So long as people know that you're there. If you're in a secondary or a tertiary and your phone is not ringing, right, you've got to do something to get eyeballs on your facility. There are a
Mhm.
number of different ways that you can do that, ranging from free to paid. I would always start with free. Paid customer acquisition in truck parking can be very tough, right? Because you've got to pay a lot to acquire that driver. And if it's a guy that's only coming in for a night and he's never going to come back, there's no way for you to profitably acquire him inorganically, meaning spending money on PPC or Meta or whatever, right?
Yeah.
If you can drive,
What would you think is typical customer acquisition cost for that one night, one shot?
so we have a customer that I won't name him. I won't even name the market because he's pretty much the only game in town. But it's I'd call it a secondary market. His daily rate is $20 and his monthly rate is $200. His cost to acquire a driver, just extrapolating on pay per click only, is about $40. Right? So he needs to get those monthly drivers to make that profitable. If you're optimizing only for daily and you're paying $40 to acquire a customer and the guy's only paying you $20 once, obviously that doesn't work, right? Or you have a super differentiated product that you feel will compel the driver to come back. So he may pay you $20 one night, but he knows you're there. Maybe you're on that regular route that he's running. He's going to come back a couple times and you're not paying to acquire him more than once, right?
What's the best way for operators to extend that lifetime value of a driver? And that, in this case, you land what could be a one night stay, but now he knows you exist. So how do you keep them coming back?
There are a lot of answers to that question. If I could distill it down, I'd say you need to have a high quality product, right? Like if you're good at acquiring the customer, but you're sending them to a product that's a dirt facility and the gate's always open and there's no lights and they don't feel safe, they're not going to come back. If you're providing an experience that is, it doesn't even have to be premium, right? Like, and especially in a lot of the markets that we work in, again, there is so little supply and so much demand that you don't need to be premium, right? You kind of just need to do the bare minimum. Have your fence, have your gate, make sure it works, have some lights, and ideally have cameras, right? And get visibility into you, get eyeballs on your site however you can. Every market, again, I feel like I say this again and again, but every market is different. Some markets do really well with paid ads. Some markets really do well with content marketing. Some markets do really well with SEO. Some markets is Google Business Profile, right? So usually, like if I'm a new operator trying to figure out how I'm going to fill this yard, I'm trying everything. I'm trying outbound, I'm trying GBP, I'm trying SEO, I'm trying SEO takes a much longer time. So I'm not sure I would really try that, but I'm trying paid. And then I'm going to pour fuel on whichever channel I feel is delivering most leads to me.
How long is the sample period as you try all these menu options? Is that a 60-day
If you're
trial?
really in touch with it, you'll be able to tell in the first like 60 days. I wouldn't necessarily kill anything without 4 to 6 months of data.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. How do you think about integrating your software with this additional visibility? I know you guys have expanded your service to provide that consulting and service on the
Yeah.
marketing front. But do you present that as a total package? What's the best option?
With Rig Hut, Basically, you can either take your existing website or we'll build you one. Driver gets to interface with your brand the entire time. It's your experience. You determine how that site looks to the driver. But when that driver goes to check out, it's integrated with the Rig Hut inventory and payment system. So driver gets the experience of interacting with Mr. Landlord's brand, but Mr. Landlord's brand is powered in the back in the ether by Rig Hut's suite of tools.
Excellent. Excellent. What are you seeing around the Southeast and the broader country on rents? Like, how are they trending over the past year? Do you see any softness at all, or any markets on an upswing or noticeably soft?
Major markets stable. Some secondaries, I'm trying to think off the top of my head where I've seen some drops, and I can't name any off the top of my head. That's not to say that they haven't dropped rates. Maybe it's a couple bucks here and there to try to drive demand. But I haven't seen like what I would call a statistically significant data set that parking rates are falling anywhere. We hear anecdotally, throughout the country, some may be seasonality, some may be the state of the economy and tariffs and whatever. Anecdotally, some people will say, hey, we've been slow the last 2-3 months. What do you recommend? And then they'll pick back up. Right. But overall rates, I would say stable, especially in your primaries.
I know there've been a lot of carrier bankruptcies in the past 18 months. Have you seen any ripple effects, or does the rest of the supply swoop in pretty fast to jump in and grab those drivers, grab the rigs, and carry on?
We've had a couple of experiences where bankruptcies have occurred within yards that are powered by Rig Hut. Some of them become messy, especially if there's creditors involved. But generally, I would say it has not had a significant impact on operations for our landlords.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
What else are you seeing broadly in the market? I mean, have you seen a lot of investor demand? Are there a lot of new entrants coming in, or have the existing owners
Yeah,
realized
for
what
sure.
had and expanded quickly to block out new competition?
There's a number of interesting things that have happened over the last 2 years as it relates to truck parking. So we do somewhere in the neighborhood of 200 demos a month, right? I'd say 10 to 15% of those demos are new entrants, right?
Mm.
Guys that are saying, hey, I'm looking at yards in XYZ market. This is what I'm thinking. What do you think? Can you help me? Can we work on a site plan? Can we do something like that, right? So I think in general, especially real estate operators are interested in managed parking. I'll tell you, some of them end up actually entering. It's always much later, right? It's a year or 18 months after we have our first conversation with them. So there's a bit of a long tail there. I'd say most of them do not end up coming in. We've also seen, as I'm sure most people that are kind of in tune with the truck parking business specifically, there has been a lot of M&A interest, I will call it. Okay.
Yep.
So there are some regional players that have attempted or successfully acquired some of the smaller operators. I think there's some challenges there, namely with LP capital, right? So managed truck parking, I call it, the black sheep of outdoor storage.
Mm-hmm.
You have, the short-term nature of the tenancy, right? Usually there's no credit involved and the assets are on wheels, right? So it's like, they turn on the truck and they leave. So how durable is that revenue if an investor is looking at that versus traditional single tenant net lease IOS or small bay warehouse product, whatever, right? So some of these operators have gotten really big, right? So we're talking deals that I'll just throw random numbers out there. We'll say, potential acquisition deals range from 3 million all the way up to 60 million. Right? Numbers that we've heard of deals that are being shopped. Once you get up into that upper bound, like you need real money to back you. And what we've seen anecdotally is that there's a mismatch there. There's like some sort of bid ask spread that's not being met with the capital and the operator that's trying to put together the roll-ups. And I think some people have found like, truck parking isn't selling a knick-knack online. Like there are real operational concerns that need to be addressed. You've got real people, you've got physical infrastructure, you've got gates, you need maintenance, you've got environmental concerns, you have security, insurance. Like you can't just go out
It's not
there.
triple net mailbox money.
Yeah, you can't just go out there and say, I'm going to roll up 100 truck parking facilities. Like there's a lot that goes into that. And I think the market is starting to learn that. So I'd say 18 months ago, we heard a lot, there was a lot of chatter about, this person's being acquired, this yard's being acquired, whatever. A lot of them did get done. A lot of them didn't. After the ones that went through successfully, I really haven't heard that much, honestly.
It's been relatively quiet, and I agree that LP capital, how hard is it going to be to get my return? What are the
Yeah,
distributions going to look like? What are the risks? Could we
yeah,
be empty overnight?
yeah,
Could we lose 30% of our occupancy overnight? Yes,
yeah.
absolutely you could, depending on seasonality and a lot of other factors. So it's not easy. You constantly have to refill your rent roll every night.
Yep,
What do you feel like, or maybe you've got some data points around this, what do you feel like should be the cap rate premium for
man.
short term truck parking versus the triple net full lease deal?
I have a wild theory on this, Matt.
Perfect. You're
And
in
I
the
don't
right
think I've
place.
ever I
Yeah.
don't think I've ever said this
Speak it out loud.
publicly.
Let's see.
I don't think I've ever said this publicly. Okay. So let's pick this is the case in most primary markets. But if you look at we're gonna pick Miami, right? We'll just use Miami as an example again. If you give me an improved piece of dirt in Miami that is capable of parking 80,000-pound vehicles on it, right? And it's secure and it's fenced and it's lit and all of that, we're gonna fit approximately 5 spaces, maybe 27 with some shorter pieces, maybe 30, whatever. Right.
Mhm.
At let's call it $600 a month gross. Let's use the max. Let's say it's 30 spaces at $600 a month gross, right? We're generating $18,000 a month in gross income. Okay. If you take that same piece of dirt and you post it on CoStar, right? And you list it with CBRE or Cushman or whatever your big name brokerage shop is, that guy's probably, I'm not super in tune with the net lease iOS market right now, but in Miami, he's probably in the high teens triple net. So call it 15 to 18,000 an acre triple net,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
So the investor buying, let's call it the vacant piece of real estate, is going to be better off with current market rates, renting it to a single tenant with much less headache than managed parking, right?
Yep.
So what does that tell you? I don't know. What it tells me is parking rates are way too low, right? There's no reason why the investor that's taking the additional risk and the additional operational burden to run a managed parking facility should be rewarded less than the guy that's signing a triple net lease with whoever, right? That's my theory. And we have a lot of yards in South Florida, and we're always recommending push rates, push rates, push rates. You're 98% effective occupancy. Let's bump them and see how far we can get. 99% of the time, operators are not willing to do that for whatever reason. They don't want to rock the boat. They don't want to create additional headache. But that's my wild theory. Okay. So in your primary markets, I think parking rates have a lot of room to go up.
That makes a ton of sense. And you're right. I feel like whether it's short term truck parking or Airbnbs, name your niche. If you're a mom and pop operator, you
Mhm.
want to keep whatever you have full. So
Yeah.
you always default to more reasonable rents. Let's keep it full. It's scary to
Yeah.
push rents and risk increasing vacancy. So I think there's reluctance throughout the property landscape to do that.
Yeah, and there's not like self-storage has this well figured out, right? But self-storage also has decades and decades of publicly available data. And you've got
Yep.
things like Radius Plus that allow you to increase your level of confidence in your decision making. Unfortunately, I mean, we're going down this route with the data, but there is no current solution like a Radius Plus in truck parking that's going to tell you, hey, this is your competitive set, right? This is where your competitor's average occupancy is and their rates, and then you can make a data driven decision as to where your rate should be. But I think that is not far down the road.
Yeah. When is that 2, 3 years from now when we start to get dynamic pricing? There's a rich enough
No, I don't. I
data
think it's much
set
sooner than that.
sooner. Okay.
I think it's much sooner than that. I mean, if we just talk about our pace of development internally at Rig Hut, I mean, we actually measured it. So we've improved our pace of development by a factor of over five, right? So something that used to take us 5 months to build now takes us 1 month to build.
Mhm.
And we're leveraging the technology internally for our own practices and our own workflows, but we're also building it into Rig Hut itself so that our customers will be able to accelerate their own workflows, right? And we're doing a lot of work with agents. We've released phone agents that our customers are using that'll answer the 90% of questions that they get without a human. It's super cost effective, runs 24/7, doesn't get sick, doesn't take vacation, yada yada. And it's cost effective. I mean, it's a few $100 a month for a 24/7 employee.
That's incredible. Yeah, just to speed up the development cycle alone is very valuable, but then to push out all the agent capabilities to your
For
users on
sure.
both sides of the transaction, by the way.
For
So
sure.
everyone's getting better service with less friction.
100%. I mean, another thing we released recently was our camera product, agent driven. We've got two versions. One's really lightweight. ties into your existing camera infrastructure. We read plates off your existing stuff. So we take your quote unquote, dumb video feed and we make it smart, right? And then we tie it into all the intelligence that we already have inside of RigHut with the vehicle information and your customers. And then you can make decisions on your security or your overage or your overstays and things like that. And then we've got which is not publicly released yet. We've got an enterprise version that is actually going to run compute inside of the camera enclosure to allow for much more advanced analytics on those vehicles, right? So we're not just taking a plate or a DOT number. We're going to put together a unique identifier for that specific truck and that specific trailer to improve accuracy and dwell time and things like that.
Interesting. And will that
Yeah.
become part of a customer database that you can then access and say, hey, I know you left this yard in Atlanta, you're on the way to Nashville. We've got this other property in our network. Why don't you check it
I'd
out?
say I'd say the first part of what you said is version 2, right? So right now we're building this all for the landlord. It's a tool for them to increase their security capabilities and tie it into their billing structure, right? So make sure that they're capturing their overages and overstays and things like that. And tailgates. Tailgates are a big thing. V2 would be to give the carriers visibility into that same information. So if we have a detection on one of your vehicles or pieces of equipment, we'll show you where it's at. We would never directly market to the carrier, right? Because that's our customer's customer.
Customer,
We don't
right.
we don't touch drivers, we don't touch carriers. If we can provide them service ancillary to our landlords, great, but that's not our wheelhouse, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. As you think about the total technology package that you
Yeah.
guys offer, which is really soup to nuts, everything that the driver and the landlord touches as part of the transaction, removing friction, removing cost, improving utilization, is that helping new developments underwrite better? Have you been approached by new truck parking developers who are like, you know what? I don't have a lot of data. I think this is where we're going to be. I'm underwriting this with certain P&L. Here are my operations. But if we use X, Y, and Z from RigHut, the deal is no longer 7.5 cap, it's an 8.25 cap stabilized. Like, have you gotten to that level of turnkey kind of operations suite, which you can actually improve deal creation?
I'll break it up into two parts. The answer to the first part is yes, we do get frequent calls from developers that are looking to enter the space, or maybe they have a piece of property tied up and they want us to kind of validate their analysis. Or, in honest, Matt, we try to stay out of those conversations unless we really know what we're talking about. Right. So, like, if we go back to the Radius Plus example, it doesn't exist anywhere in any way, shape, or form. Right. You can put together a data set, but it is a ton of work and we guide guys on how to do that. We don't do it directly. Now, if someone's already built a site or they're already in construction, for example, a lot of times guys will send us a pro forma and they're underwriting, 24/7, 365 full-time staff security or something like that. And we're able to eliminate a lot of that operational expense. Did I answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. What have we not covered today?
I think that's it. I mean, I think it's an exciting time for all businesses, really, with, not to sound cliche, but AI. I mean, AI is changing the world. Like I said, our workflows internally have accelerated by a factor of over 5. I think it's going to be really interesting when you can tie advanced software into the physical world, kind of like what we're doing with the cameras that I've mentioned. Our
Mm-hmm.
long-term vision is to be able to provide our customers a solution to run these yards 100% autonomously, right? So you you won't be able to, like, you will always need to have an asset that can be deployed to a yard, right? In an anomaly situation,
But
but
not
you can
station
run it.
or
Yeah,
out.
you can run it kind of like a hub and spoke model, like a lot of the guys do in self storage. You've got like a regional kind of area guy, and that guy's responsible
Kiosk
for
at the
10
gate.
facilities. Yeah, yeah. Yard audits will be automated, right? And we're
Mhm.
working on stuff for that too. Overall, I think it's an exciting time to be a builder. I think it's still super early in truck parking, right? Some of the stories that I've mentioned, like this is still there's still a lot of Stone Age workflows. So I'm excited for the future. Yeah,
That's exciting. Well, one more question before we wrap up. If you had to put
sure.
personal capital
Oof.
into a top one or two markets, where would you want to deploy those? It's got to go into short-term truck market. What do you like?
I mean, I'm biased. But I'd pick South Florida. Like if I could make it work, I'd buy anything in South Florida, anything basically Palm Beach South. I'm not sure you could still consider Orlando like a growth market, but when you look at it relative to your Miami, LA, Newark, I think it's got a lot of room to grow.
Excellent. Well, Jake, great to catch up as
Likewise,
always.
Matt.
Let's do this again sooner next time. Keep
Sounds good,
everybody
my friend.
informed in the market. Awesome.
Thank you, Matt.
Good to see you.
You too. Talk to you.